Okay, this video is called Is Atheism Ruining Healthcare? And this comes from, I was on Facebook and this atheist group had a post on Facebook. It's sort of atheist and theist group. And it said that atheism was better than Christianity because atheism builds hospitals, but Christianity wastes money on churches. And then it went on to say that Christianity is opposed to science and Christianity ruins healthcare. And I can tell you that that is an idiotic statement. The opposite is actually true. And why would I say that? Because number one, science actually comes from Christianity. If you read the history, actually from the Catholic Church, if you read the history, the modern idea of what science is came from the Catholic Church. You know, certainly the Greeks initiated a lot of stuff in some other cultures, but you will see that that is the case if you study the history of science, okay? The next thing is the American university system currently is based on what can be called the philosophy of atheistic Darwinism. And that is a fact. That's not even an opinion. If a biology teacher were to tell the class about the data supporting intelligent design, they would be fired. If a biology professor at university publishes a paper in support of intelligent design, ID, they will be fired. Okay, it's religious fervor is used against anybody who goes against atheistic Darwinism. I can also tell you, I went to Stanford University for undergraduate college. I majored in evolutionary biology. I was an A-plus student. I've read extensively on the subject and written book chapters on the subject, and I can tell you, intelligent design is by far the best explanation for the origin of life and the origin of complexity. If you look at the Cambrian expansion and whatnot. If you want to learn more about that, I would say start with James Tour, the PhD, but there's a whole bunch of good books on that subject. Michael Behe, Stephen Meyer, Douglas Axe, there's a whole bunch of them. Okay, anyways, now, how does this have anything to do with healthcare? Well, it has tremendous effect on healthcare, as you will soon see. Okay, so let's just ask a theoretical question. Which treatment is better? Treatment number one, which cures the patient 100% of the time, 100% cure. Or treatment number two, it cures the patient 0% of the time. I can tell you, I've been a doctor 30 years. Almost always, the choice will be the treatment approach that has 0% chance of cure, 0%. I can also assure you, all of the medical textbooks, you can open them up for yourself. They almost always recommend the treatment that has 0 chance of a cure. 0. Okay? All right. And, so I think, I know lots of doctors. I'm friends with lots of doctors. Doctors mean well. They go to med school. They want to help people. I mean, they're smart. They could have done a lot of different things with their life. They choose to go into medicine, the vast majority of them, because they want to help people. All right? But they don't get trained in nutrition and toxicology, and that's pretty important because over 70% of disease is due to nutrition and toxicology. So the reality is they don't know what to do. What are they trained in? They're trained in pharmacology. What do they get paid for? Pharmacology, okay? And the very, very, very few people who actually know what's going on, they don't put it in the books, and the other few ones like me who try to teach were completely ignored. So that's the reality of it, okay? So then you say, well, how about some examples? Am I exaggerating? You'll see I'm understating the case. Okay, look at coronary artery disease, okay? You treat that with stents and surgery, you have a 0 cure rate because you can bypass a blockage. That's nice. You'll relieve some symptoms of angina, but you'll incur other side effects. And you don't change the fact that there's diffuse atherosclerosis affecting every little tiny branch point of their coronary arterial tree. So they're just as predisposed to a myocardial infarction and death as they were before. It doesn't have a significant change in their mortality. Yeah, during an acute myocardial infarction, to stent open the occluded artery, that's valuable. But I'm talking about chronic coronary artery disease. These treatments are severely overrated. The billing for open heart surgery is in the ballpark $100,000 to $150,000. That's a lot of money. Okay, the Esselstyn diet has about 100% cure rate. All the patients who followed it, when we had 198 patients, they all had no events. The one patient who had an event out of that, I think it was July 2014 Journal of Family Practice article about his results, 198 patients. The only one patient who had a cardiovascular event was one who didn't follow the diet. Okay, diabetes type 2. If you treat it with pills, what's the cure rate? 0. You don't ever cure it with a pill. Whereas if you put them on a low-fat, low-sodium, plant-based diet, you approach 100% cure rate. And that's been shown over and over again. Kempner's data, McDougall's data, Roy Taylor, Neil Bernard, etc. Okay? Hypertension. If you treat it with a pill, 0 cure rate. The patient still has hypertension. You got to take a pill every day the rest of your life. If you treat it with a low-fat, low-sodium vegan diet, over 90% cure rate. It's probably significantly higher than that, but it's at least 90%. And that's been shown by numerous doctors in their studies, their publications. Kempner, McDougall, Pritikin, etc., and others. Okay, multiple sclerosis. Look at the data of Roy Swank. He's the Canadian neurologist who looked at the data coming out of Norway. The centrally located populations in Norway eating a lot of dairy had very high incidence MS and severe MS. The coastal populations eating more plant foods, but also eating fish, had much less multiple sclerosis and less severe. So he put all his patients, took them all off dairy, and he had 95% with intact ADLs, activities of daily living, at 34 years. And Swank says in his interview with Dr. McDougall, he says if you just treat them with conventional methods, all the pills, 90% are severely disabled or dead at 34 years. So either intact or severely disabled or dead. Take your pick. And I can tell you this, 99.9% of people take this approach. Severely disabled or dead. Okay? And then you'll say to yourself, well, how could this happen? And I'm going to tell you, people, the modern world tries to pretend religion doesn't matter. That's why the modern world is in the process of being enslaved. When people forget God, I mean, if you look at this is well known. If a society turns its back on God, God turns its back on them. Okay? And that's just a fact. You can try to pretend it doesn't matter, but it's obvious. Okay? Read the Old Testament. Read the New Testament. Read the history of the 1900s. You'll see that that's pretty obviously the case. Okay? The biblical worldview says that man is created in the image of God, therefore part divine, entitled to natural rights, to the truth, to respect, to freedom and safety. Atheistic Darwinism, which is the default philosophy. In modern society, there's really only two competing philosophies, either a biblical worldview, man's created in the image of God, or atheistic Darwinism. Yeah, plenty of people can have whatever religion they want, believe whatever they want, but as a society, those are the two viewpoints that, are in sort of a push and pull seesaw determining on what happens in modern society. And atheistic Darwinism says man is just a talking primate. He's an ape that talks. An ape has zero intrinsic rights. Zero. None. They put them in cages in the zoo, okay? They have no rights. And, what obligation does anyone have to a talking primate? Okay, you want to define a person that way, what intrinsic obligation do you feel to the apes at the zoo? Okay? The Bible says a human is obligated to follow the 10 commandments, and that includes do not lie, do not steal, do not kill. Voltaire, the French philosopher, had said, I want my doctor to believe in God so that he doesn't rob me. Okay, now here's from the Bible, Deuteronomy, chapter 7, verses 11 to 15. I've paraphrased it a little bit just to be more concise, otherwise it's too long. But here it is. If thou follow my 10 commandments, I will love thee, bless thee, and multiply thee. I will take away from thee all sickness. And you can say that's God's way of healing. He says it in Genesis 1:29. I put every plant, and fruit-bearing plant on this planet to feed thee, okay? Fruits and vegetables and whatnot. And I do think we ate a lot of fruits and vegetables in addition to starches originally. I realize McDougall thinks we had starches from the beginning, but we're not going to get into all that. Atheistic Darwinism is used as a justification for colonialism. The British loved it. It was an excuse to, imperialism, to conquer other people. Just basically say, well, they're inferior apes. We've got the power. We can do whatever we want to them. And I'm very familiar with these things. These touch me, at home. My father was from Ireland, and I talked to all the old Irish guys. They told me how they were basically slaves to the British. My real name's not even Rogers. My real name is McCrory, which means son of a red-haired king. Rogers comes from rouge because, the French had a lot of influence on the English language after the Norman conquest in 1066. French kind of major influence in the English language, and that comes from rouge, like the red makeup a woman puts on her face. So instead of saying, you are not the sons of a red-haired king, you are the red ones. Okay, just shut up, you little Irish slaves. All right, and then my mother was from Puerto Rico. For many years in Puerto Rico, it was against the law to hold a Puerto Rican flag or even to own one, okay? The Puerto Ricans were shot in the streets, and that was by America when America took over them around 1898. And you'll read about it, you'll be amazed. And that's partly why I see, why the Puerto Ricans so annoying, waving their flag in the street on their parade day. And that's because it was illegal for them to hold a flag. They would literally be shot in the streets, okay? So, freedom is something that Americans take for granted. It's actually a very rare thing in the modern world, okay? Look at Dr. Shiva. He says the First Amendment, the right to free speech, that only exists in America. So you should be more grateful for it, more appreciative of it, and more supportive of it, because otherwise it's going to be taken away from you. So anyways, atheistic Darwinism says whoever has power can do whatever they want to other people. It's the rationale for communism. Gulag Archipelago, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, that's what he said. What made communism possible? The death of 65 million Russian citizens was that they had forgotten God. And once you do that, anything goes, As Fyodor Dostoevsky said in Brothers Karamazov, if there is no God, then everything is permitted. Yeah, that's right. Then the ruler can do whatever they want to you. You have zero right to say anything. And American history sort of been rewritten ever since the 1800s by the atheists like Ingersoll and others. And they sort of shifted American history from being largely based on a biblical worldview to being based on more of an economic worldview, which trended into Marxism, of course. And the god of atheistic Darwinism, if you want to give them a so-called god, it's Mammon, the god of money. And when money is the god, hey, the obligation is to make money. You get paid for doing the thing that makes money. That's what's going to go. And then all moral obligations out the window. And that's why you've got, the Ivy League psychiatrists giving all these medications for so-called psychiatric diseases in children, okay? The long-term outcome for these poor attention deficit kids that are given all these psych meds is very poor, all right? And that's well known if you read the literature on it. But why does it continue? That's where the money is, okay? And there's a lot of other things like that. So, in my opinion, having a biblical worldview that man is created in the image of God and therefore entitled to the truth, to respect, to freedom and his safety, and you're obligated, a partly divine creature, to be good to them. And I think that would help improve healthcare. So, anyways, there it is.